Yeah, hello again, everybody. After a long or relatively long break here, again, a small video. Now, this is rather an abstract one with some urgent warnings about academic writing, especially when you get a topic for an academic paper or for a bachelor thesis. Then, which topics, if you can choose, you should choose. And if you get a topic, or if a topic has been agreed, how to interpret that topic and how not to misunderstand your task. Because there is at least a small but hardcore group of people who is deliberately nearly keen on doing something completely strange. And so here are the warnings, because you probably are one of the strange people. At least you look videos on a very strange video channel. That is a first indicator. Although you have been forced to. Okay, that's rubbish. Now, let's just go to the decisive point. How to choose a topic and what is your task when it comes, for example, to an academic paper or more precisely to a bachelor or master thesis. In our case, a bachelor thesis. If you choose a topic, then the idea is you choose a topic by which you can prove that at the end of your studies, you have now learned your job. So when did you learn your job? When you are able to deal with tasks within your discipline, which belong to your job, a realistic, brutal task in your job. Now, what's your job? Well, if you have been trained to become an architect, we would not expect you to write mostly about agriculture in your bachelor thesis. We would expect you to write about your profession. Now, if you are an architect, then your job is to build houses. So it would be completely shocking for your readers if you should have the feeling that you should write about something else than these boring houses. And so, for example, you write about the impact which house building has about or on the available land for agriculture, and so that house building in the long run will probably bring down the breakdown of the survival of humankind because there will be no land left for agriculture due to house building. Huh? And so we would be really shocked because, well, this is simply not your job then. You are not an environmental activist. You didn't study environmental studies. You are, in my example, an architect. An architect should know about how to build houses. So if you want to prove that you have become an architect, you write about how to build houses. Got it? Good. Next example. Just to make that point clear. If somebody has been trained to become a medical doctor, and that person gets a topic to write upon, like the consequences of drug abuse, yeah, then we would be quite shocked if you interpreted that topic in a way that you write about the consequence of drug abuse on the economy, the GDP, the tax revenue of a country, and then cross-border trade or organized crime. Because why? Well, because if your job is a medical doctor, we would expect that you understand your task as a task in the field of a medical doctor. So the impact of drug abuse on health. Huh? Yeah, sometimes really enlightening, like a flash of an idea. If you are a medical doctor, you should write about health. Now, you are neither an architect nor a medical doctor, and because if medical doctor, you should avoid writing about everything else instead of your profession. You should prove us you are a medical doctor, or in the first case, you should prove you have become an architect. Now, that means all in all, your topic should come from within your discipline. What you learned, what you were trained for, and you should understand your topic as focusing on your discipline and not push in everything to the left or right so that the core is ignored. Now, dear adherents of my channel, or let's call it more honestly, dear victims of this channel, your discipline is very often taxation and law. Now, if you are trained for taxation and law is about how a business is affected by a tax law and how one can minimize tax burdens in a legal way, how tax obligations can create obstacles for certain business transactions, what happens to cross-border trade due to a specific tax rule and not to the economy, but to the behavior of a business. So, your topic is impact on business behavior and not macroeconomics. It's not microeconomics. Your discipline is about the consequences of tax rules for individual businesses. So, you should have that in mind. And why is a warning necessary here in that context? For reasons which are completely obscure to me, some of my students, who very often come from certain foreign countries, or from Germany, or from wherever, have the very strange idea that when they have to do an analysis of a certain tax rule or so, then they come across with certain blah blah about the consequences of that rule for macroeconomic aspects, for microeconomic things, for the general policy of the world, of the state, of the country, of the population, for the growth of the economy, the growth of humankind, for international trade relations, for fairness of legislation, for the authority of the Pope, or what else. And then they give me statistics and charts on all that and land maps, and they find the strangest sources on the strangest internet servers from the strangest government authorities, all on things which are out of scope of the topic because they have nothing to do with your discipline. So these people write about everything which they find, and nothing of that has to do with your job. It is not your job to do these things. Yeah? These people usually then completely drown under all these nice, completely irrelevant facts about the world and completely ignore the actual challenges of their task. What does this tax rule, this tax law, this tax system have an impact for an individual business, for business transactions and the like? This is your job. That is what you learned. So do your job. What are the details of the rules in question? How do they work? What consequences and difficulties do they have for business behavior? That's your job. Now, because the reason is, do not write about macroeconomics and microeconomics. You are not economists. That is not what you learned. You are not trained for their tasks. Your knowledge is enough to understand economical discussions, but you are not the expert in economy. Forget about that. You are neither macroeconomists nor microeconomics. You are not the future political advisors to your government. You are, and now that's difficult to understand. You are not people ruling the world. So that's not your aspect. I know that when you were a child of 10 or 15 years, you all probably dreamed about governing the world and how you would do it. What's good for the whole mankind? Yes, great, but not your job. So the brutal surprise is, first, you are not 10 or 15 years anymore. The second thing is brutal surprise. You are not going to rule the world. So you do not need to bother about the consequences for macroeconomics, microeconomics, for general policy, for special policy, for the welfare of your country. All that is not your job. So stick to your job. It might be nice if you are interested in all these things in addition to what your job makes up. But then it still has nothing to do with doing your job. So if you have to do your job, leave all this rubbish out. Is that clear? You are not qualified for solving the problems of the world on a scientific scale. It is not what you were trained for. It is not what you learned. So do not do this. Wake up. You are not going to be the next president of the People's Republic of China. The present incumbent is healthy and is going to do his job for a longer time. And your chance to be the next one is a chance of 1 against 1 billion. So you are not going to be the next president of China. You are not going to be the next president of the USA. You are not going to be the next president of Malawi. And you are not going to be the first president of the secret world government. So refrain from all views on macroeconomical consequences and all microeconomics things. We are interested in analyzing tax rules, what they mean for citizens in a concrete case, what they have an impact on the economic, so business administration behavior of people. Huh? So if, for example, you get a topic like consequences of a tax reform in the US, or such a thing like that, then it is clearly understood that if we give such a topic to somebody in the field of taxation and law, that we are not interested in macro and microeconomics things, in things what a journalist would write about, in the political background, in what the wife of the current US president thought about the clothes or the dress of the wife of the former US president at the moment when that president signed that rule into law. All that is completely far from what you have to do. Yeah? Your task is that you are not an economist. You are not a journalist who talks about the general blah blah of a matter and avoids a detailed knowledge of all the facts. You are not the chief political advisor to the head of government of any state on the earth, and you are never going to become it. So, got it. Just think about what you have learned. You are somebody who has been trained to think about the application of tax rules to cases and how they are applied to enterprises, what they mean for the individual cases, which consequences come up from that, which difficulties these things pose. If you get a task, think about this, because this is your job. So my urgent recommendation is, when it comes to your bachelor thesis or to any other academic paper on taxation, just do your job and leave all the rubbish out. Leave it to journalists and idealists. Nobody reproaches you to be an idealist as far as you are able to do your job. But please do your job and nothing else when you have to write a bachelor thesis. This is all I have to say here. So talk about the contents of tax rules. Find out the details, find out the problems for business transactions, spare us any collection of macroeconomic, microeconomic, political, and something other, which is all blah blah, which has nothing to do with your job. So I hope you got it. Perhaps it might save the one or other from completely going astray. Thanks for watching and hope to see you soon. Recover well from this video, and please do not forget the basic message. Thanks and goodbye.